Hey guys, this is Carrie, and in this video we're going to be starting our first project. We're going to be each of us making an About Me website to introduce ourselves to the class, each other, myself, and also to get some practice learning how to code for the very first time. So this project is going to take about 7 lessons to do, and before we started I wanted to show you a couple of projects from my students from last year. So usually I make a web page that has every single one of my students' projects on it. However, the website that we were using in order to host these websites used to be free, and in like the last week it became paid, so I don't have access to any of these websites anymore. Luckily I was able to salvage a few of them, so I'm just going to show you these two. So this is a student, Nat. She graduated last year, and this is her first coding project. And you can see that her About Me is really strong. So she has this great heading right here. She's got some headings in a slightly smaller font, different colors. She uses a couple of different fonts. She's got a couple of different pictures on her page, a list, and oh my gosh, an animation. So these are all of the types of things that you're going to be learning how to do in this unit. Let's take a look at another example. So this is another student named Peggy. She also graduated last year. And Peggy has a really exceptional About Me as well. So she has many of the same features as Nat. You can see that they both have this big title at the top of their page, but that they've styled it, that they've styled it a little bit differently. Something cool that Peggy figured out how to do, and you might figure out today if you finish early, is how to make the text move across the screen like this. Peggy also used some animations, it looks like, similar to Nat. And the emojis, I think, inside of the text are a really cool touch. All right, so, the last really cool thing that Peggy did at the very bottom of her page is inside one of those moving things, she embedded a bunch of songs from Spotify or playlists from Spotify so that you can listen to the music that she likes while you're on her About Me. So this is what we're going to be doing in this unit, and I think we should get started. So when we write code, it's similar to writing an essay or something like that. We need a place to write our code. So if I was writing an essay, I would write it in Google Docs, but we're not writing an essay, we're writing code. So the website that we're going to be using is called codesandbox.io. And I'll write this here really big. And this is the website that we're going to be using to this is the place where we're going to be writing the code that will create all of the websites that we create this year. It's my first time using this one because the one that we were using last year switched to that paid model, but I think this one looks really great and I'm excited to use it. So I'm going to click on codesandbox.io, and I've already got an account. It's linked to my Gmail through the school. You probably don't. So the first thing that you should do is you should log in with your school Gmail to create an account. And it might have a couple of steps that you have to go through. But after you complete those steps, you should reach a screen similar to this. So pause the video here, create your account. All right, well now that you're back from creating your account, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new document where we can write our code, similar to when we make a brand new Google Doc for writing an essay. So I'll press the Create button, and the template that we're going to be using will always be HTML and CSS. You'll see that I actually have the one in recently used because I recently used it, but you might have it down in popular. So make sure you choose HTML and CSS. If you choose one of the other ones, it's a different template. It might be useful for something after this class if you're interested in learning more about coding. So I'd click on HTML and CSS. I'm going to name it About Me. Now visibility, this is really important. We don't want to make the visibility private because we want to share this with other people in the class to introduce ourselves as well as me, your teachers, so that I can grade it. And we also want to make sure that we don't make it private because private workspaces start to cost money after a while. If we keep it public, we can have as many workspaces as we want that are completely free. I'm going to keep it in the drafts folder and I'm going to keep it on Sandbox. So let me create my new workspace. So this workspace is pretty incredible. It has a lot of things going on that we're going to be using as tools. So what you'll see is there's like kind of three mini windows here, and they all have a different purpose. The first one shows the files that the program creates for me. So they created 1, 2, 3 files when we made this web page. And the one that we're going to be working today is this first one right here. I'll talk to you more about the other ones in 1 second, as well as the first one. When I click on the first one, it actually opens up the code. So it has a little bit of code already written for me. And that little bit of code is going to give me a head start so I don't have to like write out kind of some of the stuff that I don't really understand yet. It's going to allow me to like just kind of jump right into the coding part, which we're going to do in 1 second. And then all the way on the right, you can click the preview button, and this will show you a little mini preview of what your website currently looks like. So before we start coding, something really important is what's going on with all of these files. And what that comes down to is you are actually going to be using 3 different programming languages to create all of the websites that we create this year. The first one, just like our file name says here, is going to be HTML. That's going to be all of the stuff on the web page. So if we look back at Nat or Peggy's examples here, I'll go to Nat's because it's like less moving around. These words right here, this is stuff. That's going to be HTML. This picture right here, that's a stuff. That's a thing as well. So we'll put that in the HTML as well. All of the text on the page, all of the images, everything we see is HTML. So you might be wondering, why do we need the other 2 programming languages? The second one that we're going to learn, and you can actually see it right here in the file name for one of the files that we're not going to touch yet, it's called CSS. And this is all of the style. So all of the style of the web page is how did Nat program it to have this font here, but a different font here? We chose this color here, that would be a style choice. We made the image this big, that would be a style choice. We put these little pink, red lines on the margin, that would be a style choice. And so all of the graphical layouts are going to be coded in CSS. And the final language that we're going to learn, and we're not going to use it in this project, but we'll use it in the next project starting in Unit 2, is going to be called JavaScript. And JavaScript is a really awesome language because it lets us interact with the page. So if you think about many web pages that we're going to build this year, like I showed you guys that we could turn our keyboard into a musical instrument. When we press the buttons on our keyboard, we want the web page to play sounds. That's an interaction. That's going to be JavaScript. Sometimes when one of the projects that we will make this year is a quiz where you have to answer a bunch of questions on the quiz. It won't be a quiz that I assign you. You'll be making your own quiz about whatever you want. And then you'll have a button at the end, and that will score the quiz for the person. That interaction of scoring the quiz, checking to see if their answers are right, and then giving them a score, that will be coded in the JavaScript. And finally, in the game, when we're controlling the character, and our character interacts with different things, like hitting food, or like getting eaten by enemies, those interactions will also be coded in the JavaScript. So by combining these 3 languages together, we'll have stuff on our web page that's well styled with functionality. And that's why we need all 3 languages to make our web page. But enough about that. I know we're eager to get started on our web page. Let's get started. So when you look at this starter text, for the time being, we're going to skip this part of the document called the head of the document. And you'll notice a little bit of I'll talk to you about that in a second, actually. So we're going to skip the head of the document, and we're going to be focused on something called the body of the document. Oops, don't press a random button when you're highlighting it. So the body of the document is going to be all of the stuff that actually appears on our web page. So I can see right now in my body that they're starting off with this line of code right here. And this is a really, really like typical line of HTML code. What it says is, here my H1 starts. I have this thing with the less than and greater than signs. That just means the start of something called an H1. The H stands for heading 1. So this is going to be a really big headline or a header at the top of my page, like the title of my web page. And then you have the same symbol at the end, except it has this extra slash. And that's going to mean this is where my header ends. So let's change this, because I don't want my header on my webpage, the title of my webpage, to say that. I want it to say something like about me. And you'll see as I type that, the preview on the side actually catches up and it changes it so that instead of having an H1 here that had that weird text in it, now I have an H1 that says about me. I have a big header that says that. If I want to see what my page looks like in full screen, I can click this button right here. All right, so now I've got a pretty simple web page. I've got a big header right at the top. And I can have as many of these H1 elements as I want. In fact, let me show you how to create a new one. The easiest way is if I want to make an H1 element that has the opening and closing part, I type H1 and then I press the tab key and it makes the two ends just like parentheses for me. And then I can type all about Carrie. So I'm going to switch back to the full screen. I like to see it in full screen all the time. So now, yeah, that makes sense. I've got my big header at the top. And I've got my all about Carrie, also a big header. But I don't really feel like I want these headers to be the same size. I feel like this is my title and this is my subtitle. So what I'm thinking is maybe I'll make this header a different type of header. Instead of being a header 1, I can make it a little bit smaller by calling it a header 2. And by changing the symbols that I use on the outsides of the element from H1 to H2, you'll see that it actually changes it to be a smaller header. Next up, I'm going to create another headline. I know a lot of headlines to start, but this is going to be not the headline of my whole page, but the headline of my first section. I'd like to have a legal biography section to introduce myself. So that one, I want it to be smaller than the H2 even. So you guessed it. I can type, and look at this is kind of cool. As I start typing H, it gives me some hints. It looks like all the way up to H6 is possible, but I'm just gonna go H3. So I guess I could click it if I wanna do it that way, or I could have done H3 tab. And I'm gonna call this section biography. Let's see how that's looking. All right, so yeah, H3 is a little bit tinier. That's great. And I can mess around with that. I could choose H4s, H5s, H6s, whatever you think is right. But I like this. I'm going to come back to this. Let's see. I'm going to also have another section called Things I Like. And I'm going to make that one in H3 also because, like, to me, these are equally important. They're the section titles, and I'm going to have like a paragraph of text and maybe some photos in between. And then at the very end, maybe I'll have a third section. It's also going to be equally as important as these, and I'm going to call it like Hopes for the Year. You don't have to have these same 3 sections. You could call your sections anything you want. They can be funny, they can be real, they can be totally fake, whatever you want it to be. So now I've got my webpage starting to come together. I've got my 2 titles, and I've got the 3 section headers. And I'm going to start to fill in some paragraphs of text. And then later in the unit, I'm going to fill in images in these sections to complement the text that I add. So for my biography, I'd like to write a paragraph. And you might think, oh, well, I could just write a paragraph like this. But it turns out the way that when we code HTML, we want to put everything inside of these opening and closing tags. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that the text I'm writing here is not just random text like this, but it's a paragraph. So instead of using these header demarcations, I'm going to use the P symbol. And if I just click that, this will create a paragraph for me. And all about me, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to actually type my biography here, guys, on the video because that would make it a really long and boring video. Maybe, yeah, it's better probably for me just to put those random symbols. And now I can see in my preview over here that I've got, after my biography section, a paragraph. And then maybe I have another paragraph about me. So to create another paragraph, I can't just put enter. I have to mark it P, tab, and then a second paragraph about my, oh my gosh, dot, 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 blah, 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 blah. And I would encourage you guys don't to blah, blah, blah. It's much more exciting and interesting. Helps me get to know you a lot better. If you, I don't know, either use your sense of humor to make it funny or you make it actually earnestly about yourself. And the more text that you have here, once we start to add styles, the better your website is going to look. So now I've got my biography with a couple of paragraphs below. Things I like is also going to have a paragraph maybe in it. It's going to have some text in it. And then hopes for the year. Maybe I hope my year won't be so blah. Will be my paragraph there, but I'd hope that you would expand on these a little bit more so I can get to know you. If you want to, you can add emojis inside of here. I'm not sure exactly how to do that on the Chromebooks, but we can look it up together if you're interested, or you can just Google it, and I think you'll be able to copy and paste emojis in to make your paragraphs more interesting. So this is about where we want to get up to with our websites today, but with actual answers to these questions, and you can use different headers. You might be like, wow, this website looks pretty bad because it's just black and white and it doesn't have any pictures and stuff. But that's okay, it's our first day. And remember, we're just starting with the stuff on the page. After this, we're going to add all the styles and things like that make our websites look more like the students that we saw from last year. So you can see Nat has the same structure, and she took her biography seriously, which is really nice. But then once we have these words on our page, we can actually style them and make them look nice. We're just not up to that stage yet. Okay, challenges. If you feel like you finished everything, there's a couple of cool things that I'd like you to explore. Peggy figured out how to make this stuff move across the side of her page. This is called a marquee element, and you don't have to do this, but you might be interested in Googling this, this phrase to add it to your page. I have some other challenges for you too. If you want to figure out other stuff to add, you could look at adding button elements, HTML. That would be another good thing to try to add to your page. Or you could try to add an audio element to your page. And you can Google all of these things. And when you Google these things, the site that's likely to come up is this site right here, W3 Schools. They are an awesome site. And they will have information and examples on how you can add all of these things to your website if you're interested. Final challenge is if you do all of that, let me know. Maybe you can add YouTube videos to your page or Spotify playlist or SoundCloud songs. There's a lot we can do with this. But hopefully your webpage is looking at least like this by the end of class today. See you guys. Bye.